Captain's Log Supplemental.
Hey Jeremy, you know those race cars you're busy building?
Yeah, I do.
You,
I
you,
got one
you
that I'm looking at every day.
you know what I don't see you working on?
You don't see me working on the amazing Sentinel system yet.
That's true. It would take all of 10 minutes for you to have one.
And it's very quick and easy to install.
It is. It is. And we could watch you when we are not at the race with you and see how you're doing. And then we can call you up when you get out of the car and tell you everything you did wrong.
And I love that because so many years I've been driving and not been able to see what I'm doing.
I know.
And now we can.
I know. You know what I'd like to do with the video? My most favorite thing is I take the video and I load it on YouTube and then I send it to my coach and say, look at 26 minutes and 17 seconds. Look at this one lap and tell me what I can do better. And every single time, you know what they say?
Everything.
Exactly. Precisely. So with the Sentinel system, you get instantaneous feedback plus useful feedback that unfortunately is accurate for my driving.
I think it's accurate for all of our driving.
Pretty much. Yeah, that's probably true. Yep. But you need to get one in your car, sir.
Yes, I do. And with the discount code that you're going to tell everybody, they can save 10% on this awesome system.
Yep. Trouble free. I haven't had an issue getting video every time we've gone out with the Sentinel. It's always worked. Can't say the same for some of the other systems we've tried. So I don't know. It's on the podcast notes down there. Don't do it while you're driving, though. We like to have our listeners live. It's good.
From the great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision, Bill Fisher, and their soon-to-be Wonder Woman, Vicki Fisher, and our Captain Marvel and head flight trainee, Jennifer Skripchuk. Their mission: to fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team.
Welcome to the Garage Heroes in Training Podcast. I'm going to be one of the hosts for this episode. My name is Bill. Who else is hosting?
I'm Vicki.
Miss Vicki.
Yeah.
Podcast time.
Uh-huh.
Guest time.
Yep.
I only screwed up the invitation to him 3 times this time. That's working on a record.
Yes.
Not my finest moment. Anyway, we have been on our must-get guest list, the super secret must-get guest list that I'm not sure if anybody's ever seen it besides me. But anyway, he was on the list. He has been, I first heard about him through interactions and goings-on with the crazy people over at GridLife, crazy in the best way. He is with Yaw Speed, and his name is a unique spelling of Aric Streeter. Welcome to the podcast, Aric.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. It's been a while that we've tried to get this arranged. I think, if we want to tell the whole story, I think you and I started talking about getting me on like almost a year ago. So
Yeah. Well,
season and, life and all that stuff got in the way, but I'm glad to be here for sure.
Yeah. Well, there's one thing that I like to say about our podcast, and hopefully nobody gets a mental picture. It is a full open kimono podcast, so feel free to talk about anything, and please don't picture that because it can't help you stay on the road right now while you're driving. So,
all right, there you go.
So the easy question is, I have heard arguments over whether your first name is Aric or Eric, and I'm not sure which way you prefer. Since it's your name, you get to choose.
Yeah. That seems to make sense to me, but yeah, it's Aric. I usually don't correct people, honestly, because I mean, it's kind of a goofy spelling anyway. My thing is usually like once you realize or recognize how to spell it, you usually don't forget how to spell it, but pronunciation is maybe a little bit iffy. But yeah, it's Aric, just like a normal ERICK whatever. But yeah, that's me.
No umlauts or anything there that I
No,
might have left
no,
out.
no
Okay.
umlauts. I mean,
Okay.
there could have been. My mom's like 100% German. My dad's like half German, so there could have been some umlauts there. But yeah, I think they got it out of like a baby book or
Well, that's
something. I
fine.
mean, it's. I think it's Nordic or something. I think there's a few
I think
different
it is.
areas of
Yeah, but
the
there's
world it
a
comes from. But
I think there's a comic book character that is his real name. I don't know if he can count a comic book character as having a real name, but his real name is spelled the same way as yours. So that's why I was like,
yeah,
it was like when I was always reading comics when I was growing up, you could never figure out how to pronounce that name and how to pronounce Thor's hammer. And finally, when the movie came out, they pronounced it. I'm like, that's how you say it. Okay, so
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not too many words I know of start with MJ. So
yeah,
MJ.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. They're especially in the English language, those aren't
mm,
super common.
nope, nope, not at all, not at all. So we were talking before we started recording, and you said you'd listened to a few episodes. So obviously, you already know I'm not the best at doing my intros. I just do them because no one else will. But I did not do a very good job for you because you have quite a quite a complex pattern of how you've done what you've done and all the things that you've done. So could you kind of give everybody a little bit of background in case they're not familiar?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I won't spend too much time on like early days history, but I've been, interested in cars ever since I was like seriously a little kid. I was one of the only people in my family, probably the only one that was into any sort of motorsport. So I would have to sneak off and watch TV, watch some Indy 500 or IMSA races or something, until my parents told me to stop. But I've always had like kind of a mechanical mind. Got into like erector sets and that kind of stuff super early on.
Hmm.
My dad was kind of an early computer hobbyist, so some of that kind of interest developed from that. Electronics and computer engineering and that sort of thing. And I knew I was going to be an engineer when I was like literally like 8 years old. So that's a path I've been on. So I do that professionally. I've been with Sirius XM for, gosh, it'll be like 24 years now in January, which is insane. I was literally 28 years old when I started, so thinking that I've spent half of my life there is kind of wild. But in the during that time and even before that, I got into a little bit of hill climb and autocross racing when I was in college. Took some time off. We had some kids. Through the early 2000s and then kind of mid 2000s, I kind of picked it back up again and kind of went all in. The kids were interested in going to track events when I was little. They kind of got out of the interest of it, but just and you mentioned like GridLife, at the very beginning. That's kind of the group of guys that kind of pulled me in, like big time to Midwest racing. I mean, I grew up in Minnesota, and then moved down to East Tennessee, so there's a lot more circle track kind of stuff, and that was kind of my formative years. But moving up here and in the late 90s and meeting some of those guys like in the 2000s and then into the 2010s kind of paved the way for me to get back into things. And I'm one of those people that normally doesn't do things halfway. So I usually jump in probably a little bit too willingly to things, but that's what keeps life interesting. So
Hmm.
Cool.
So, are you still racing?
yeah, I am. Yeah, a little bit less so than I was like 4 or 5 years ago. We are starting a business. Me and one of my good friends from Chicago, Jason Saney, who's a ex-pro racer. We started a group. It's really a shop for now, but we're kind of growing into different areas of race engineering. And in a previous LLC that I had, I did a little bit of race consulting and race engineering and that kind of thing. So we're kind of melding those two things together, kind of the shop stuff, hands-on stuff, plus like the math and chassis development stuff in the background. So with that kind of spinning up over the last couple of years, I haven't been behind the wheel as much, but I've been trying to make the most of it. Like for the example, like this year, I first time I did one lap of America, so I did that this year with Scott Robertson, who's I'm wearing his hat right now. Robertson
Hmm.
Racing,
Hmm.
one of my good buddies. His new wife, long
Sorry.
time, I guess significant other, Becky, who was on one lap with us too. She's part
Hmm.
of Robertson Racing as well.
Yep.
But yeah, so I did that. Ran a couple GridLife events this year. Ran a hill climb that I normally run in northern Michigan, but that was pretty much the extent of my driving this year, which is probably like a tenth of what I normally do. But still in it, still enjoy it. I'm still reasonably fast, so I'll stick with it. And it's always nice to be kind of on the older side of the paddock, especially at the GridLife events. I was kind of joking the other day with Adam Jabay that they published this demographic slide deck,
Mhm.
to as a sponsor sales, partner sales tool, and they had some demographic information on one page, and their demographics go up to 54 years old, and there's nothing beyond that. And I reminded Adam that I'm going to be off that chart in like 2 years because I just turned 52. And I said, hopefully you make another bar graph for me and some of the other older guys that I know are similar age when the time comes. And he says, well, you're going to have to stick with it. And I started thinking about that. I was like, you know what? I think I'd enjoy actually getting behind the wheel and messing with some 20-year-olds when I'm 70. So I'm probably going to stick it out until I have to stop.
Yeah, even Adam's graphs deny that I show up to the events, so don't worry about it. It's fine. I've got
There you
that
go.
graph. I've got that part of the graph set up for you. It's you, me, and Bill Griffin, and I'm sure there's a couple more.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. And actually my partner, business partner, Jason, he's like almost exactly the same age as me too. So I guess we're kind of, our small little army of old dudes, but
Hmm. We're the
So,
GridLife masters. That's what I'm
there you
preferring to
go.
say. Adam denies we exist, but that's okay.
Yeah. I don't know if wisdom comes with age, but
No, no.
probably not.
so what does y'all speed do as the shop?
Yeah, so we're part of the car club building. It's in kind of north side of the Chicago downtown, off of Knox and Montrose. Big building that they've been in for a while. They used to use it as just a storage facility, but excuse me, they expanded into kind of this warehouse space, and they have a big catwalk office where they have a lot of the GridLife staff work out of now, including Chris. Stewart and Kyle and everybody that you see on the podcasts and kind of behind the scenes. So we're a small part of that building right now. So like right as you walk in there, and if you guys are ever in the area, let me know and I can set you up with a tour or whatever. It's kind of a cool place. It's
That would be fun.
hidden off the main roads. Um, can you still hear me? My Zoom just closed.
Nope, you're
You
good.
can't hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Am I good? Okay. All
Mhm.
right. Yeah. So we're hidden off the main drag. So you have to like have the secret door knock to get in. But once you're in there, it's like a pretty cool place. I mean, it's got a common area with a bunch of video games. It has like multi-panel big screen TVs on the walls. There's car storage, and we have our shop out of there. So we work on some of the car club cars that they keep there in storage, and then we have a lot of project work through a couple primary customers that we do too. And it kind of runs the gamut. I mean, we've worked on air cooled Porsches. That's one of Jason's kind of specialties, and one of our main customers kind of big interest in cars. But we've worked on everything from that to like old Datsun IMSA racers to older Miatas to newer Miatas to Fits to BMWs. We'll pretty much do anything. And most of it's kind of focused on, either fast road or, track type stuff, but we're still kind of trying to find that niche where we can make a specialty of things. But if you put the crystal ball on, probably a year out, we'll probably be doing primarily project work, some support of different racers. We're planning on spinning up a little bit of a ride and drive sort of thing. We haven't done much of that. We've been focusing on internal racing, but in the next couple years we'll have enough spots on trailers and that kind of thing to do vehicle prep and support for other racers as we go to the different GridLife events.
That may be the only way we get Adam behind the wheel again on an event is if you were to do something like that because he's just running around like a crazy person.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, I think if somebody could babysit his car for him and just give him it gassed up and aired up and all that stuff and let him focus on just that,
Maybe.
I think he'd have a good weekend.
Yeah.
So
Oh, he definitely would. It's just whether he relax enough to do it or give himself enough grace to go take the time away.
yeah.
So
Yeah. I think I mentioned he likes the idea of delegating. He's not as good at actually doing the delegation part, but I love that guy.
he's great.
Mhm. So what's left on your to-do list?
As far as
Well, I mean, any tracks, any series you need to do?
yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Yeah.
What's
So
your
like
wish list?
Yeah, my wish list. I think, kind of short term, it's to get the shop paying for itself. I mean, startup businesses and all that stuff. I mean, it takes a
That would
while
be
to
nice.
get to break even, and that kind of thing. I mean, I think what we'd like to do, and I say we, I really mean Yaspeed, and specifically my business partner Jason Saney. I should mention also too, good friend of mine James Horion, who's also a good friend of Lena Chin's, who I think you guys had
Hmm.
on a few weeks ago. He's part of the organization too. He does some e-commerce work and business development, that kind of thing. But Jason and I are more of the hands-on guys. But what we'd like to do is kind of grow into other probably endurance racing series, whether it's WRL or something like that. It's something I've had some interest in for a while. I don't really do a lot of wheel-to-wheel stuff. I've done a couple Lemons races and that kind of thing. I tend to be personally kind of attracted to things that are against the clock. I've always, been one of those guys who, have done sports, growing up that, had something to do with like how much time does it take you to do things? I mean, I play basketball and that kind of thing too, but I guess that's kind of timed too, right?
Yeah.
But specifically back to your question though, WRL, some endurance stuff would be great. I'd really like to do some stuff in Europe too. I don't know exactly what that looks like, whether it's club racing. I tend to attract and are attracted to people from Britain for whatever reason. I guess you can call me an Anglophile or whatever, but the cars I typically build and field myself are English cars. So I have a lot of connections in England, and I've done a lot of sim racing on all the English tracks. And I'd love to, make I don't know, a summer or a season out of doing some club racing in England at some point in my life before I get too old.
That'd be kind of fun. With your predisposition towards English cars, does that mean you have a specific level of hell for Lucas Electrics?
Yeah, well, so I do have a couple of the bottles, and I don't know if you've seen them or not, but it's called replacement smoke.
Hmm.
Lucas Electric replacement smoke. So like when the electrics go up in smoke, you can always just sprinkle a little bit of that secret elixir on there, and it automatically fixes it without even needing to do anything else. So that's good. But they don't make that stuff anymore, so I don't know what I'm going to do after that.
I was going to say we could definitely use some of that at the Lemons events. We could bring that and sell it for a pretty penny in the paddock there.
Oh yeah, yeah. You could, yeah. If I figure out who makes it, it's probably some overseas place or
Mhm.
or something. I'll let you know because I think there's definitely a business opportunity there.
100% for sure.
Yeah.
Nothing gets
Yeah, but
people.
yeah, yeah, electrics and English cars definitely are something that you end up becoming probably a little bit more familiar with car electronics than you want to,
Yeah,
having
Ugh.
English cars.
yeah. A friend of ours just bought an MGA, and he called me up and he's like, "I can't get my tire replaced because the valve stem's broken and leaking, and it's a 90-degree valve stem." And
Oh
I'm
yeah,
and I'm like, go try going to a motorcycle place. They tend to have them, so
there you go. Yeah,
we'll see if that works. But
yeah. You definitely have to get a little creative, especially if you're like working on older English cars. The good thing is so many of those cars still have like kind of a club or cult following in England. So if somebody is racing or doing something with an English car, you can probably find most of the parts and that sort of thing.
mhm,
But it's definitely getting harder. You have to have some creativity and patience too to have English cars.
for sure. Yep. All the parts come with fish and chips wrapped in newspaper around it. But
Yeah, they do. Yeah, every once in a while,
That's
curry
a
too.
thing.
I've heard.
So, what about your race philosophy? Do you have a motto, something that you tell other people when you're behind the wheel? Words of wisdom? Do you have one?
Yeah,
Everybody
words of
has
wisdom.
something.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Like I think one of the things that I struggle with is kind of the opposite of what other racers that I've known over the years struggle with. I struggle with being aggressive enough behind the wheel.
Hmm.
It's definitely a skill to be able to push a car to the limits, and especially if you're on the track with other people. Like I said, I don't do a lot of wheel to wheel stuff, but that's a whole other level of um kind of sensory, input and that kind of thing. So I struggle in those kind of situations to be aggressive enough, What I've noted over the years, especially with younger guys, is they tend to be a little bit too aggressive. So like when we're doing coaching and driver development and that kind of thing, it's to there's kind of an unlearning that has to be done in some cases where
Hmm.
somebody's been doing something for a while and they've probably developed a little bit of bad habits, a little bit of over driving and that kind of thing. Kids are immortal, right? So the younger you are, the more you're probably driving too aggressively. So I try to get people to balance the aggression, and stay within your kind of headspace that allows you to be aggressive and calm at the same time.
Hmm.
Because if you're coming off the track and you're like hot-headed or you're pissed about something or you're I mean shaking in a bad way. I mean, I always like the nervous shakes when you get out of a car. It's kind of an adrenaline thing if you can kind of keep it positive, but staying positive on track and managing your aggression is kind of my motto or mantra.
So I guess part of this is related to what you talked about with Scott and Becky getting married, which I had endless fun writing a complimentary post. And once I saw the post about it, I was like, well,
Oh,
congrats to
awesome.
Scott and condolences to Miss Becky. Uh,
Yeah.
but it's kind of standard. That and I was at the groom's party. I would always give somebody a football because that was the only gift they were going to get.
Eh,
Because everything else is going to be the dishes and things like that. So you
yeah.
you did one lap with Scott. I believe you were in the same
Yeah.
car, quite a fun
Yep.
car, I believe, and just
Yeah,
in
quite a
case.
fun car. Yep. Yeah.
Hmm.
It kind of started. Yeah, I should probably spend a little bit of time, unless you had a follow-on question.
No,
Then I can
no,
kind of give you.
that was the beginning of the
Okay.
question.
Okay. Yeah. So we ended up fielding the prototype Fields Auto Works Cardinal Coupe. That it's been around for a while, so I probably don't have to explain it to too many people. But it's a Ford Eco Boost based custom tube frame chassis car with this swoopy bodywork. It kind of harkens back to like some old Alfa Romeos from the '60s. And it's one of a few cars that Fields has, and they've sold quite a few of them. They have a new mid-engine kind of supercar, LMP, older. I shouldn't say LMP, like pre-LMP, Le Mans type racer that they're working on now too as a new development project, and a follow-on to the Cardinal Coupe, which is an open top roadster. I forget the name of it right off the top of my head. It's a three-letter acronym, but we took the prototype car, which has had by far the most miles on it. It's been, wrecked at the track like 7 or 8 times, cobbled back together, but, still a super solid platform, very capable platform, extremely small though. Like, I mean, I see, Vicky's Miata in the back there. If you scrunch that down by about 20%, that's the size of a Cardinal. Once you're
Hmm.
in it, it's not bad, but getting in and out of it, quite the challenge, and that's coming from a guy who owns a Lotus Elise, and those are, difficult to get into too. But very similar caliber. It's exceptionally roomy in the back though. We could carry like a lot of spares in the car, which is great. But yeah, we definitely got to know each other, on that event. I mean, not that we didn't know each other. I mean, I think Scott and I kind of both, talked about this. There's only certain types of people that you could spend that amount of time with,
Hmm.
in such cramped quarters. And he and I are both pretty calm people, so I think that worked pretty well. But yeah, great car. We had a little bit of problems with the car's power during the event. Unfortunately, we had a alternator go out, and that was the only non-OEM part on that first chassis that's been since replaced with the OEM Ford piece. But it ended up taking out part of the drive-by-wire throttle system, and we didn't realize that until like literally the day before the last event. So we were basically throwing parts at it because, again, like I said, we had such room for spares that Rob gave us a big cabin full of, or I should say, hatch full of spares, and we were throwing parts at it every day, and it seemed like it would work, and then it would go into limp mode, and then it would seem like it'd work again, it would go into limp mode. It was always fine on the freeway, but it was once we got on the track that was a little bit of a challenge. But yeah, we ended the event really well. We got first place in class. The class was pretty small. It only had two cars in it. The other car was a Factory 5 GTM coupe. If you're familiar with those, it's
Hmm.
a LS based mid engine, kind of supercar looking thing. They had some issues with, I believe, like a throwout bearing or something like that the second or third day. So we ended up finishing all the events. We did lap times at all the events. One of the events we ended up missing out on the morning, so we didn't, we weren't really in contention for like a top 10 finish. But I think our slotted position when we started was 18, and we beat that position. I think we ended up in like 13th or something overall of like 67, 70 cars, I think, that started, total 67 or so that finished. And we ended up fifth place in the dry skid pad during the last day too, which was fun. I drove that one, and I probably could have pushed a little bit harder, but I knew the car had the potential, so I didn't want to like screw it up too bad and not get a result. But we were playing around after that, and my hooning session after that was actually faster than my official time. So there's definitely some desire by both Scott and I, as well as the Fields guys, to take a cardinal or two or three, maybe. Didn't hear that from me, but the 2025 should be pretty cool. We're probably going to be involved again with Fields and doing cardinal things for one lap in 2025. So that's something to look forward to, and that'll probably end up being a lot of my driving for the year, like it was this year as well.
Yeah, you get a lot done in a very quick time, so that's
Yeah, you
not.
do. It's so crazy. I don't know if either of you guys have been on that event or anything, but it literally is like the most excruciating, enjoyable and stressful like 7 days of your life. I mean, first days, first couple days seem like, oh my God, I can't do this for another 5 days. Flip that around and you add 2 or 3 more days to that, and you hope it never ends. It's one of those kind of
Yeah.
addictive little adventures that is definitely fun to do.
I have been signed up and paid for the past 2 years, and the state of Pennsylvania has declined to let me have a registered car. So I'm signed up and paid for this year, and I have a business thing that I can get out of. So I'm just going
Oh,
to
no
call up
way.
Brock and say, I surrender. I don't think it's meant to be.
That's too bad. So are you not gonna try to do it in the future then, or?
I've got this meeting that I'm so far unable to get changed. I've got a couple more weeks of lobbying, and then I'm just going to surrender, and we'll see.
That's a bummer.
I
Yeah,
know.
well, I mean, the event's not going anywhere, so
No,
future years.
hopefully not. I said that about the Thunderhill 25 though, so
Well, true. Yeah,
maybe I
good
blew
point. Yeah,
that one. So
yeah, I know. Yeah, I got to know Brock a little bit on this year's event, and I mean, he's such a cool guy. Super kind of crass and brash at
mhm.
one level, but like biggest hearted guy you've ever met, and he loves the event. I mean, I don't see, as long as he can do it, I'm sure it'll be a
Yeah,
thing, and he's pretty healthy. So
he is. So when doing my skulking around and looking at your past and trying to figure out what we were going to talk about, I saw a higher than normal percentage of hill climb pictures and posts. Is this something
Hill
that
climb.
appeals to you in some certain way, or is
Oh
it?
yeah, big time. I don't know what it is. I think it was actually, gosh, it was probably like in the 80s when, when they have like the Wild World of Sports or Wide World of Sports or whatever it was,
Mhm.
those kinds of things on TV, broadcast TV. And I grew up in northern Minnesota, so the only thing we got was like CBC and the couple networks.
Right,
But I was always big into sports, and some of those like Wide World of Sports things would show different events. And I remember tuning into one. I was probably like 10 or 12, and it was the Pikes Peak hill climb, and it was still dirt back then.
right,
But I was watching those guys, and these open wheel cars just hang, the back ends of these cars over cliffs, with 900 horsepower alcohol powered or alcohol fueled IndyCar motors. And I'm like, there's something about that I like. And I'm kind of a creative guy when it comes to car things too, or at least I like to think I am. And one of the things that appeals to me in hill climb, Pikes Peak specifically, is the lack of rules, right? As long as you're safe, there's always going to be a class they can put you in. And I tend towards the less limited classes, so like unlimited classes. And I was able to attend and engineer and support a few Pikes Peak fielded cars over the years, starting in, when was it, 2017? 2017, yeah, 2017, with Cody Loveland with his NV8 hypercar. I was a big part of that program. I got to meet Paul Gerard, who we found out later
Hmm.
that year was the U.S. Stig.
Yep.
And he's now a really good friend of mine. Seriously, probably one of my best friends. So that was a cool add to the cadre of characters I can, call my friends. And
Hmm.
I did a little bit of work with the Sierra cars guys. These are the Life Motorsport guys. Helped them do some suspension development on their little Sierra, single seater car. Similar to the things that I've run personally, like my Caterham, 7. So I kind of, and having a little bit of background in suspension and chassis development, they reached out to me, or we kind of, reached out to each other and collaborated for a couple years on wiring that car up, or wiring that car out from a chassis development perspective. And I supported Paul as driver for 2 years. I think it was 2019 and 2020. So I've been to Pikes Peak, I think 4 times now, and that's fun. That's kind of the support side of hill climb for me. I don't think I would ever want to drive Pikes Peak. I mean, it's kind of risk versus reward thing. My
Sure.
wife would probably kill me, but smaller hill climbs, I love doing those. There's one in particular I've done now for, gosh, what is it, like 6 out of 7 years? Empire up in Michigan.
Right.
They have a fall-time event, single day event where they invite a number of cars. I mean, it's very hard to get a car in there, but since they kind of know me, they maybe give me a little bit of preference on getting into the field. But about 40 cars, 3 or 4 classes, mid-September, and it's literally the best event. I mean, you end up driving, literally probably like a minute to a minute and a half all day. But it's the one event I did have to miss it one year, and I shed some tears about that because it's so fun. And I mean, there's definitely another level of adrenaline when it comes to driving a car that you could potentially put into a tree or flip over. And people have done that. Even at this little Empire Hill Climb event that I go to, people have flipped cars and run cars into trees and berms and all that stuff. So far, I've been able to, knock on wood, avoid that. But yeah, that's one of my primary kind of genres of motorsport that I really enjoy.
So I think I'm curious about it, but not curious about it to drive it, but I just want to understand it a little bit. Do you, from a setup perspective, do you set it up like a race car, or do you set it up like a race car going up a hill, or only turning right, or
Yeah,
you
well, yeah,
know?
it really depends on the event, honestly. But one of the things that most hill climbs are very different from circuits with is the road conditions. Whether it's grip level or just the bumpiness of a typical, a road that you would have going up the side of a hill, right? Especially if that hill or mountain experiences any kind of weather and it's paved.
Mhm.
Like for example, like Pikes Peak is like a mess. Every spring they have to figure out what parts they literally have to repave, or they couldn't run. Even like just tourists going up the mountain or not. Let alone the race event. But so typically the setup is, again, depending on how small the course is, you might do like a right or left side bias setup, but it's usually kind of like a circuit setup on a normal track that has both right and left turns. But you typically crank the damping way down, just to make sure that the car has enough compliance and doesn't like literally skid over the bumps. Pikes Peak, a couple years that I was there, there's a buddy of mine that fields relatively small cars at Pikes Peak, and he's had some issues with literally the road or ground clearance on the cars, and then being sprung and damped too aggressively.
Mhm.
And then it's kind of hard to make traffic traction when your wheels and tires are in the air. So that's always a balance, and that's really kind of the biggest difference between setup for circuit racing and for hill climb, is just make sure that the car is compliant enough to maintain reasonable contact with the ground.
Hmm. It just seems like it's like on one hand, I keep sitting there saying, well, if it's a good handling car, it should be fine. Just maybe, like you said, maybe spring it a little softer. But then on the other hand, I'm like, usually when you think something's relatively simple, it's always simple to a point, and then it becomes very much not simple. So,
Oh yeah. Yeah, and if you're at the pointy end of hill climb, I mean, just like anything, I mean, probably the better example is honestly English hill climbing. That's like a sport that really kind of developed over in England. Relatively short events typically. And they've been running up these same hills for literally 50, 60, 70 years in some cases.
Hmm.
And the guys that run these events, they literally have the course knowledge down to hundreds of a second, setup down to tenths of a PSI, and what sort of rain dance you do around the car to make sure nuts and bolts aren't going to, fall off because they're that close to the edge of, keeping the weight to a minimum and that kind of thing. So yeah, there's definitely um, you know, a kind of a crossover, like you were saying, Bill, as far as like, getting into that type of event relatively easy, doing well at it still, doable, right? If you have the right car and the right chassis and the right know-how, but you're really extracting, the best out of a hill climb racer and car is quite the challenge.
Yeah. Looks like something fun to do, but then it looks like I would wrap myself around a tree because I've done that skiing already, and it's really not that much fun. Trees are hard.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
if you have the ability to turn off mortality at least while you're behind the wheel for that, couple minutes or whatever, that definitely helps.
yeah, I can imagine the way that goes. I have this. I don't know as I get older, I guess I'm making up for my time when I was younger, when I was like nothing can hurt me. I will survive everything, and now parts of my body have come to vote and said no, that is not quite true. And I'm like, yes, I know. That's fine. It's okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I broke my ribs twice in 2 years during COVID because I wanted to stay active, and that was the first time I broke my ribs. And
ribs
I
are not
used to be a
fun.
little bit, yeah, they're not, man. I'll tell you, the second time I broke ribs, it was probably worse than the first time, and it happened to be at Pikes Peak too. I literally slipped off of the loading ladder on a semi truck in the
Hmm.
middle of a rainstorm, and my feet went from under me, and I had like a probably a tenth of a second to think about my mortality as I'm falling down to the ground. Landed right on my arm on the side of my left side of my body. But yeah, that was like a 6 month recovery process. It wasn't fun.
Hmm.
So I guess that's the downside of getting old. But
Yeah, one of our racer friends, his only goal from New Year's is to not fall down the entire year. So about 2 weeks,
there you
three
go.
weeks, 2 or 3 weeks ago. I
Yeah.
don't know if it was 3 weeks ago, maybe it was longer. I quick texted him and I said, "Well, I failed your goal." And he's like, "Am I going to see pictures of you in a cast on Instagram?" I'm like, "No, it wasn't quite that bad." But a couple days later, wasn't much better. I think it was one of those where you wish you were in a cast because it would have felt better, like kind of like your ribs.
Yeah. Luckily, I tend to be a chronic cougher a little bit too. I just have like kind of runny
Hmm.
sinuses and that kind of thing. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, but somebody must have been looking out for me because like the two times I had the broken ribs, I wasn't in one of my up cycles on my coughing because like the few times I coughed or even laughed, especially towards the beginning, I mean, like that's a whole other level of pain.
Yeah,
Trying
it's
to cough or laugh through a broken rib or three.
yeah, it's definitely no fun. They're quite tasty when they're cooked right, but they are not fun when they are hurt. So
Yeah, exactly.
not that I'm promoting people eating human ribs, just trying
Whatever
to,
works for you.
yeah, it depends what kind of rub you put on it. It's fine.
There you go.
So we're going to take advantage of you just a little bit in
Uh-oh.
a very nice way, since it's still the holidays and when we're recording this. You're you were around with kind of grid life, even maybe pre-grid life.
Yeah,
So
a little bit. Yeah, I knew a few of the guys prior to GridLife becoming GridLife. I think the first festival event, kind of a follow-on to Honda Meet, was like 2014 or so. I got officially involved, 2015 time frame. But yeah, it's been around as a series for what, like almost 10 years. I think it is 10 years.
I think so.
You mentioned that before we started recording, Bill, and yeah, and I mean, I think knowing some of those guys, and they're all quite a bit younger than me, probably like 10 years or so, younger. So they started off as and they still are, right, very motivated, people that want to grow something and have that kind of startup mindset. And I've worked for a couple startup companies in my professional career, and that kind of energy is really addictive to be around. And it's been really cool to see how they've grown, 10 years, 20 years, and how they've, kind of both the racing side, but also the entertainment side, and a lot of the kind of social media side of things. You look at their, I mentioned that sales deck that they had that showed the demographics. I mean, the number of views and interactions, especially with their live streams that they get these days. I mean, it's better than some pro series.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've watched some of
I'm an internet
the live
stalker of
streams and
GridLife,
that kind of
so
thing.
yeah, I've got them
But
all.
yeah, okay, yeah. And I mean, even if I'm not at an event, I'll watch all the live streams because it's so well done. It's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
It is, and I think it was this week or it might have been last week. They had T-Pain on Hot Ones, and they started
Oh
talking
yeah,
about his racing and stuff. And
yeah,
I'm like, are they going to say the word GridLife? They came this
yeah.
close. It was so
Oh,
close.
did they? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
but
was actually at Laguna Seca the year that he was a headliner for the entertainment there, and that was really cool. And I mean, like, and he's a genuine racer, right? I mean,
hmm
drift focus obviously, but and I don't know him personally, but a lot of the guys in the GridLife, circle, do. And I mean, he's a genuine, guy, right? I mean, he wants to get better at his craft and, isn't coming at it lightly. And I think he's kind of digging in, even more over time after he's kind of gotten his taste of what GridLife is. So that's cool to have, like, real celebrity faces, involved, if not promoting, to a certain extent, just from his connection with the org, the kind of growth of the whole ethos.
hmm So we came in relatively late. We came in well, we came in relatively late for racing in general, but we came in relatively late
Yeah.
for GridLife. So what was it like in those like early first few events? Because getting Adam
Gosh,
to tell stories is sometimes easy, but if they're stories
yeah,
that make it seem like he did something well, they're very hard to get out of him. So
yeah,
let's
yeah.
make
He's
him
like literally the most
uncomfortable.
humble guy, right? Yeah,
Exactly.
he's the most humble guy. Yeah. So yeah, the early days, the things that I remember the most was just how unorganized it was, because it was really small, right? I mean, like
hmm
hand timed, um, you know, uh, uh, time attack classes where, you literally didn't know where you finished until like 2 hours later when somebody was debating whether was it this car or was it this car, so it was kind of like,
It
I
was the
don't know,
blue one.
what's that?
It was the blue one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was fun in that way too, because I mean they're relatively small, right? I mean now, especially like festival,
Oh yeah.
even some of the drivers that have gone forever, it's impossible to get tickets. You can always get GA tickets, or I should probably put that in quotes, honestly, because I think like last year and the year before they sold out on GA and camping tickets because they fill up that whole
Yeah.
upper hillside of the Gingerman
Yeah.
facility there. And gosh, what did they say? It was like 75,000 people showed up over the festival weekend. It's, I might be a little bit off on that number, but it's some insane amount.
It looked like
And
it from the camera.
yeah, especially when they do their drone things and that kind of thing, you can just kind of see the footprint of that. But yeah, a lot different from today's events. It was very kind of track day plus sort of feel with people just trying to figure out what important things were important and not so important things weren't so important. But the vibe was there, which I think is maintained, if not improved, over the years, which is really neat.
Right. Right. I just it's hard to imagine that what you see now, if you go to, especially if you go to a festival, uh was ever small because
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I mean, herding cats is nothing compared to what those guys pull off on a weekend.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy too. Well, and the funny thing is too, even some of their bigger events, I mean, they've been, hitting them out of the park, but I mean, there have been a couple events. I remember the first Laguna event. They didn't know if it was going to be able to pay for itself because a lot of the GA people didn't commit to having tickets until that, that
Wa-
day of, or even
Walk
like the
up, yeah.
second day. Yeah, walk up kind of thing. And they, blew the GA attendance, anticipated it out of the water by the end of the weekend. So they went from, oh my God, this is going to cost us tens of thousands of dollars to actually making money off the event, or coming pretty close to it. I know the festival events tend to cost a lot, especially with entertainment and
hmm
all the stuff around that. But yeah, they're making it work, which I think is awesome.
I think if the fog would have stayed on for another half hour, Adam would have been fully gray. That's all I know.
Yeah, he's definitely gotten more gray since I first met him.
I think it's every event.
Yeah.
Mm.
So So since you're kind of, I believe you're in the periphery, you may have been actually involved in the core group for some of the rules and how the rules are designed and thought about. I don't remember if you were.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, not I wouldn't say I'm in the core group there, but being kind of a technically minded guy and a guy that's done this for a while, and a guy who knows, a lot of the principles, specifically, Abe and Chris, or I'm sorry, yeah, Abe Schmucker, who does a lot of the rules stuff, Adam, and then Chris, I'll get pulled in from time to time on rules things. I had so much going on this fall, I wasn't able to kind of reach out to them to talk rules so much, but it sounds like they're pretty close to finalizing the rules for 2025. You've been working on it for a couple of months, but that's another fun thing too. I mean, I tend to be kind of a documenting person.
Mhm.
Probably kind of because of my engineering background. So, I don't like rules when I'm a competitor, but I like writing rules,
Mhm.
in a way. And trying to not make rules restrictive, but like permissive. I think that kind of like feeds some of the creativity, especially in time attack classes, right? It's a little bit more prescriptive in the touring car class that they have, the GLTC class. That's quite a bit more restrictive written. It still is permissively written to a certain extent, but trying to find that right balance where you're not stifling people's creativity when it comes to building time attack cars and different classes, and making sure that you're not excluding people year over year, that not that the rules makers are ever concerned about a specific car, a specific chassis, a specific person, but
That's not what the
you know,
racers say.
yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, they'll always say, "Oh, I mean, all those complaints." But one good example is the Club TR class that I've been pretty active in sponsoring a couple drivers in over the last 3 or 4 years. I think the class is 4 years old now, as of the end of this season. They basically developed that class because there was a lot of their kind of track day guys, Honda meet guys that didn't really have a place to competitively run in
Hmm.
grid life, and it literally has become I would say the most competitive, bar none, of any time attack class in the country. And I think it's actually the best attended class for time attack in the country too, just in a span of 4 years, right? I mean, if you
Yeah.
compare to, anything that GridLife did prior, or, Global Time Attack, or any of the other groups, they have decent attendance, obviously, but, to formulate a group or a class and have it as big and as competitive as it is over 4 years later, it's a testament to how they write the rule set, I think, right? Where
Yeah.
there's many different ways to skin the cat, and plenty of creativity in that class, even though it ends up being relatively prescriptive from a powertrain and weight perspective. It's been really interesting to see what different kind of solutions people have come up with, and been able to operate on the pointy end of the spear.
Yeah. So a lot of the people that we talk to on this podcast, that they have the view of they are the recipient of the rule and not the provider of the rule. And sometimes looking at things from the other side may be helpful. So I was hoping we could go into a little bit about some of the difficulty or the process that it comes to making the rules that people may not
Yeah.
realize, or how it's not specifically written to make it so Miatas are always at the back, or pick a car. It doesn't. I'm just
Right.
saying Miatas because
Yeah.
Vicky's
Yeah.
got one behind her head. Sometimes it pops
Yeah.
up in front, sometimes too, but that's a different
Yeah,
story.
yeah, I think that sort of thing is always like kind of in the mix, right? Like and I mentioned too, right? You don't want to be, too exclusionary on different chassis and that kind of thing, but there's always going to be, things that just don't fit into certain buckets. But I think the grid life guys, and the amount I've been involved in, and obviously I've been a little bit more on the periphery of the whole rules thing compared to some of the key players there. There's so many discussions that happen around that particular balance specifically. Like, I mean, I've talked to both Abe and Adam a number of times, and during rules making, they might be on the phone 6, 7 hours a day talking about different topics from time to time. Where I can visualize Adam, because he's like the world's best multitasker. He's probably up on a ladder somewhere installing some double height door at some like loading dock or something while he's on earbuds with Abe, and Abe's on lunch break from his super cool PhD chemist job. And I mean, they're really uh committed to to making sure that they can find that balance of some of those different variables that you mentioned.
Yeah. It's I often either text or talk to Adam, the guys, about, some thoughts I have with rules, and very rarely do they say they haven't already thought about it, or
Yeah.
they tell me what I missed. So it's
Yep.
not,
Yeah.
they're not trying to, pick a
No,
car,
definitely not. Yeah.
and it's not
Yeah,
as
yeah, and
easy.
I've been really surprised by that, honestly, too. I mean, it kind of shows like how committed they are. I'll think of something, or I'll hear somebody say something, and I'll be like, you know what? Yeah, maybe that needs to be part of the rule. So I'll reach out to Abe or Adam, and like exactly like you just said, right? It's very rare that they haven't already thought about it and thought about it 27 different ways, and they have the right solution. They can tell you exactly how they got there.
Or the
So, and
problem with
it's
what you're saying and why it doesn't work.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there's always a challenge too when you have competitors. And I mean, I guess I'll still call myself a competitor, since I actively drive and the time attack part of GridLife. But it's having competitors with their natural bias part of the rules making process, can be a struggle too, because typically, I think a lot of the feedback that they'll get is, hey, my car isn't competitive, or hey, I have this and I want to make it competitive in this class. I mean, there's a lot of different, kind of red flags there, obviously, because especially with time attack classes that have been around for a while, and I'll put Club TR in that same class now, or same category now. There's a lot of work and development that goes into making a class competitive car. It doesn't really matter what class you're in, whether you're talking Sunday Cup or unlimited. And there's the people that want to be instantly competitive with a chassis that they happen to have. I think those are some of probably the easiest questions to kind of answer. But I mean, as a racer, where let's say if you have a competitive mindset. I mean, a lot of people come to the events and they don't really expect to finish well. They just want to have the participation and experience and that sort of thing. But especially the guys that are at the more kind of competitive side of wanting to participate. There's always going to be a lot of questions from people specifically about, hey, why does this penalize me, or why does this penalize this chassis? Because I know three other guys that have this, and we'd totally come out and do this if you could change this rule. So I don't envy Abe and Adam on those kind of inbounds.
Yeah. Why can't I run, 335 with tires, and everybody else be stuck with 225s? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So, and
And
from the GLTC perspective, I know that, there was the Honda bias, which was
right,
replaced by well, not replaced, but then it was centered on,
superseded. Yeah.
centered on the I just blanked on the
S2000.
S2000, and
Yeah.
now it's everything, all things
All
Corvette.
things Corvette, right?
And
Yeah.
what are we going to do to stop the Corvettes from just taking everything? And
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah,
like,
well, and that's a really interesting one too, because that one series when Tom O'Gorman, basically ran away with the whole series, and it looked like, and Andy Smedegaard and some of the other guys in the
yep.
ASM crew were guys and gals, I should say. Lena was running too, and I think Fiona Lou
Hmm.
was part of their family for a while.
Yep.
Those guys are always in the top 10, if not finishing first, second, third. So there was this view that the S2000 had some sort of special sauce.
Hmm.
And what it really came down to, and I think Adam even told me this once on the phone when I was talking to him. He says, I don't have a S2000 problem. I have a Tom and Andy problem. They're that good. So
Yeah.
like, what do you do with that? I mean, you can only penalize the car so much if the drivers are working harder than everybody to be at the pinnacle of their game. But yeah, I mean, so since then, there's been some penalties that have been put on, S2000s. I'll put that in quote. I mean, it's more of a K24 Honda engine penalty that engine carries that it really shouldn't, from a power to weight and, chassis, compatibility perspective. So, that's a lot of the reason why you've seen the S2000s kind of fall back in the field a little bit, and, there's a number of Corvettes. I mean, there was, the one Corvette that was dominant for a while, the purple Viking car from Swenson. He won the series championship, I think, the year after Tom kind of ran away with it. But those guys have a number of years under their belts now as far as making those cars competitive. And I mean, it's a great platform, right? Because I mean, it's got super low drag,
Yep.
a relatively small frontal area. It's very amenable to like adding aero devices or taking off aero devices, depending on the track. It'll take huge tires. You literally don't even have to shift at all, if you tune the engines right. So I mean, it's
Yeah.
a very solid
Everything's
platform.
quality wise, it's under stressed beyond belief, so
Oh
it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
going
I
to
think
break.
yeah. Whereas if you flip that around, you look at the S2000s or like Eric Coutil's Civic
Hmm.
that he runs. I mean, he's constantly breaking things, and why is because he's running similar paces to cars that like are working at 60% of their capability.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Hmm.
I remember we invited him onto the podcast, and he's just so busy. He hasn't made it yet, but
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
I invited him on before I knew he was the driver that he was. I just wanted to have him on
yeah,
because I wanted to thank him for the Instagram posts on how he's doing what he's doing and the level of workmanship and craftsmanship that he had, because
yeah.
we were aiming for like 20% of where he was just routinely doing. And I'm like sitting going, oh,
Sure. Yeah,
that would be much better than my stupid idea. So, uh,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
you know,
he's super creative and like, and yeah, I think everybody kind of really gets off on, from a positive perspective, like the details he goes through
hmm
and into in his social media posts. I mean,
hmm
he doesn't hide anything, right? He tells you
no,
exactly what he's doing, which is awesome, and
yeah,
he does a really great job at it. I mean,
yeah.
he's, definitely developed into a very capable, engineer slash driver slash
Mhm.
builder slash all the other things.
Yeah, he's definitely of the philosophy of here. I will show you everything that I do with a full open hand, and then I will kick your ass on the track. And he does.
Yep. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
yeah, and he's got the eye of the tiger on the track too. That's for sure.
a
He's
little
fun
bit,
to
so,
watch.
for sure.
So, what is your Sunday Cup history?
Sunday Cup history. So, yeah, early on when it was spec fit, I kind of watched it from the periphery, but I started getting interested in running that series, and I did run it one year. It was 2022. Around that time when they, kind of expanded it to different chassis platforms. I wasn't like super hip on, the fit platform, mainly because it's kind of like an engineering nightmare to make the suspension work correctly. And there's a couple chat groups I'm in, and in one of the main Sunday Cup cat chat groups, we're literally, hundreds of texts a day talking about what the best setup is on a fit, just because they're so different with a beam axle and a lot of the other kind of just compliance factors, related to bushings and that sort of thing. I wasn't super hip on that platform, but when they opened it up to different platforms, I've always been a mini guy. They had a
Hmm.
number of minis, both classic minis and BMW built minis over the years, and my goal for 2022 was to buy a car, build it for Sunday Cup, get my daughter out on the track, a little bit, and that part of it didn't really work out, but I was able to field a mini in Sunday Cup for that year, and it really got me hooked on the kind of the philosophy and the ethos of that category where, and I think Chris Stewart said it at the time too, people are kind of like, well, Sunday Cup, it's not even really a time attack class, because it's not a builder class and there's only so much you can do to the vehicles. It's more of a driver class. And it's true. I mean, there's, still a lot of work you can do on the cars, but the driver caliber in that series is like phenomenal.
Hmm.
I got pretty close to a podium a couple times, at a couple of events, but I didn't podium all year. I think I finished like seventh overall out of like 30 some odd people for the season. So I did okay, but just the caliber of drivers there is like just something else. I mean, if you look at the car parity and the driver parity, I mean, there's been times where literally events are won by 2 or 3 hundredths of a second, and the first 5 to 10 guys are all within a second or even a half a second of each other, which is, very unusual in time attack. You typically have, 2 or 3 guys that kind of run away with the class results, and
Hmm.
everybody else is kind of also runs. And Sunday Cup is very unlike that, where everybody's very, very equally matched. And then there's also a really cool vibe part of that too. Like everybody kind of helps each other. They're competitors at, some level, but everybody's friends, and, most of them paddock together. And, if
Right.
somebody needs a brake release tool or something, somebody's probably has it. Or if you blew up a rotor, somebody's probably has one of those. And, they're literally like, just gift things around the paddock, which I think is, honestly, probably, at least half of the appeal to that particular class for me. A lot of similar things happen in other classes too, but Sunday Cup definitely has that kind of close knit kind of family feel that really kind of adds to the events.
Yeah. I locked up my last place at my Sunday Cup event. So, it was somebody had to do it, and I did.
Yeah, well, I mean, we wouldn't have the fields that we do if everybody didn't show up, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it was fun. It was first
yeah,
weekend with the car, but it was tons of fun. So
yeah.
I had
Which car was it again? I
a,
forget.
I had a red fit. So
Oh, okay, yeah, I remember that now. Yeah.
yeah. So it was kind of it was supposed to be a one lap car, so it had kind of a tribute to when Tom used to run with Track Night in America. He had a fit with
Oh,
a whole
yeah,
bunch of track outlines on it. So what I
yeah,
did was
yeah.
I
Okay.
put the 2020. I'm gonna make sure I get the right year. 2022. That was the first year I was supposed to do one lap. So I put the lap outlines, track maps of each of the tracks that we were going to that year. So, but I never got to run one lap.
Cool.
So I just have to keep. Actually,
Yeah.
somebody else is doing B spec with that car, so they should be having a good time with it. Good luck,
Oh,
Eric.
it was a built B spec car, or was it
Yeah,
built after that?
yeah, it
Oh,
was
okay.
built B spec car. So,
Yeah, that's another interesting one with Sunday Cup. I really want to see a lot of more B spec cars in there to see really how they stack up. One of my good friends, Frank Schwartz, who fields a lot of
mm-hmm.
BMW, or BMW
Minis, yeah,
built minis,
yeah,
the newer minis. He's a big B spec guy. He has a rental program where what's it called, Grass Paddock Motorsports. Great guy. If you don't know him, you should definitely get to know him because he's very wise in the ways of racing and life and all that stuff. But he's been to 1 or 2 events. One, I think he was supporting a racer in, and I think it was like AMP a few years ago. He brought one of his slower B spec cars, and he finished second for the event.
mm-hmm.
And I'm curious to see how a well prepped, well driven B spec car would do compared to the now relatively well developed Sunday Cup field. I mean, they're getting faster and faster every year
Yeah,
too, so that could be some decent kind of parity
yeah.
battles there.
Yep, it is no longer the Matt Williams Invitational. It is a
No, it is not. Yeah. Yeah. Which is so funny too. Like, yeah, I bought an RX-7 from Matt a couple years ago that we tried to field in Club TR. It's a little more fragile than I kind of had hoped. So it's been sitting on the back burner, but I went down to his house to, we ran the Tail of the Dragon for a day with a couple buddies of mine that were helping me buy the car and transport back to Michigan. And he's got a stack of those GridLife plaques, the kind of the wooden
mm-hmm.
plaques that they gave out for years. And I mean, it's like first place, first place, first place. I mean, he's probably got like 30 first place things that are like a foot thick.
Mm-hmm.
That's how many trophies he got in the early years of Sunday Cup. And I think he has designs to maybe come back at some point. He's focusing on a lot of family stuff these days. His kids are still pretty young.
Yeah,
So credit to him for that. But yeah, he definitely is quite the driver too. So, it was the Matt Williams Invitational Cup, but like he also is, exceptional at driving as well. So it wasn't a gimme thing for sure.
no, it definitely wasn't. It was just it was funny when I was looking through when I was first getting into Sunday Cup and thinking about it. I was like, oh, let's see who won this one. Oh, Matt. Okay, let's see who has a track
Yeah.
record. Oh, Matt. And it was like, tick, 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 tick. I'm like, okay, I guess
Yeah.
we should have Matt on sometime if I want to learn how to do this because
Yeah.
apparently he's pretty good.
Yeah. He'd be a good one to have on too. He's got some cool philosophies about life and racing and all that stuff.
He's got an open invitation. We'll eventually track him down. We usually try to
There
meet
you go.
everybody at the track and see what we can do. But sometimes we spring people out of the blue and say,
Yeah.
hello, you don't know us. We're weird people who aren't very good at the sport, but
Oh,
we want to
geez.
talk about it for an hour or so. Are you willing to give up your life for $0.00? Please let us know. So it's
Yeah,
amazing
which
how many people say
I'll
yes.
always say yes to. So yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So I was going through your Instagram and I saw this one Instagram of it looked like a open trailer. It had some tools on it. There's a couple of things I couldn't quite identify. They might have been stands of some sort, but there was this
Yeah.
one little red Vespa that my beautiful bride loves her red Vespa. I was wondering if
Oh,
you guys
yeah.
I
shared
do.
a Vespa infatuation.
To a certain extent, yes. That Vespa was actually part of some equipment that we bought from the guy that supplied a lot of the shop equipment that we have in the Osprey shop in Chicago now. And I brought it home to replace the fuel pump on it. It's a known issue with the later Vespas, the 250s, I think they are, where the if you use any sort of ethanol fuel in them, the plastics and the pumps just die. So it's an easy fix. Other than the fact that you have to literally take the entire back end of the thing off, which takes like a few hours to do. So I still haven't done that quite yet. But my goal was when I brought it here, gosh, it was probably right after one lap, so it was probably like in May or something, was to get that replaced and maybe get it registered in Michigan and use it as a little pot around town, sort of motorcycle. I haven't endorsed this lease, and it's probably the next thing that gets for because I do want to spend a little bit of time. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you went a little robot-y, but we heard all the words. They just sounded really funny.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, my phone, which I'm using for connectivity here, got a voice message, and I think it like overburdened my data or something. So yeah, I completely lost my train of thought. What were we talking about?
We were talking about Vespas, and that was your next project coming up. So
Oh yes, Vespa. Yeah, so I want to get that thing running, registered. Have some fun. I grew up riding smaller motorcycles, so I definitely have an affinity for those. And not that the older Vespas are like small anymore. I mean, they're pretty
mhm.
darn big
Yeah, they are.
compared to the older ones. But yeah, they're I've always appreciated their design and their ethos and the fact that they're Italian, which is probably another thing that probably not be too proud of. Just like liking English cars probably isn't at the end of the day the most practical thing in the world, but they're pretty.
I think the big advantage you have for most of us is you actually know how to fix it when you're done. So we would love to be part of that group as well. But
YouTube.
Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah, man, I'll tell you what, like, yeah, I mean, you can literally learn anything on YouTube, right? I mean, like when I decided to do this fuel pump replacement on this, I went to YouTube and I'm like, yeah, okay, that's pretty easy. I
I
mean,
can
literally, if you've had that problem on any sort of vehicle or washing machine or anything, just go to YouTube. You'll be an instant expert.
That's how I fix everything.
Yeah, it's it's probably better than having decades worth of blood, sweat, and tears on becoming an expert on any given thing. Honestly, just
Hmm.
develop that kind of general set of skills and use YouTube and that sort of thing for the nuance. I do it often.
It's true.
I understand. I think that's how most of our cars get repaired, and in spite of what it looks like, that's still a good idea.
Yep, sure
We've
is.
we had a bit of the struggle bus this summer, all of it, but it was quite fun. We had a good time. We just got kicked in the teeth a few times. It's fine.
It
Yeah,
is
yeah, I
fun.
can
And
relate.
then
My what happened to you? What happened to your guys? Is was it vehicle breakdowns and that kind of thing, or?
Some were self-induced, and some were a struggle bus on trying to get a new build. It's our first. I think it's our first real new build that we tried to race, and I'm not sure we
had
were quite
gremlins.
prepared for the struggle bus of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. And I have two broken race cars at the end of the season that I don't have any motivation to touch for a bit. So I get it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yep. So it was I think Miss Vicky was ready to pull the plug on the season somewhere around, I don't know, August.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It
was
was.
wasn't bad though. We won some stupid lemons award, so that was kind of fun. But
It was. It
Hey, there
was.
you go.
It
Yeah.
was a rough season. This particular year was a rough season, I have to say.
indeed it was. But it was fun.
It
Always.
was fun.
Just sometimes you got to sit there and say, I'm done. I'm good.
Yeah.
Please,
Well,
please let me
and
go
you'll
now.
always remember that you always remember the good things too, right? Fast forward a couple of years, you won't remember the struggle bus, you remember the stories.
Oh yeah,
It's cool the way the human mind works that way.
yeah. I think one of the comedians I used to listen to said that's how we can explain how the human race has survived because that happens with pregnancy. So
Right? Yeah.
otherwise all the
Yeah.
single child families. So
Yeah. Who in their right mind would have two kids if you didn't forget half of what happened
mhm.
while you
Exactly.
were doing that whole ordeal? For
100%.
sure. Hats off to women, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Always. So, sir, we have taken up a good chunk of your evening. We have,
Yeah,
I
I
think
didn't even look at the clock. How long we been on?
a
Oh, wow.
little bit,
A little
and
over an hour.
we
Yeah.
have a ton of more questions. So we're going to have this as the end of part one, but many parts to come in the future.
Okay.
Mhm.
And if
Cool.
people want
Awesome.
to keep up with you or contact you at Yaw Speed and get the secret tour, how would they do that?
Yeah, so we're pretty active on Instagram. We have a yospeed.us website too that we're still in the process of developing. It kind of goes over some of our services, and we are going to have a few products that we offer. We have some partnerships with MCS, with Braid Wheels, a couple, higher line products that, work across different platforms and that sort of thing. We're kind of focusing on some of the German brands right now,
Hmm.
BMW, Porsche, just because that's kind of the work that we have lined up for now. But reaching out to us on your own car projects, whether it's slapping parts on things, doing which we don't try to do. We try to do more of kind of a holistic approach to things when somebody approaches us for project work and that kind of thing, figuring out what they want from it, and kind of guide them down that path. But
Right.
we'll you know be willing to entertain anything that anybody wants to do, whether it's setup, driver development, chassis development, full builds, dyno tuning. We have some partners that do dyno stuff around the Chicagoland area. So yeah, Instagram's a good way to get in touch with us. We also have a Facebook page, same name, Yospeed. And like I said, yeah, the website has an email link as well, and that'll be being updated, through the fall here. We were trying to, get to the point where we could do a blast for um, uh, Black Friday, but we're probably going to miss that just given a lot of other stuff going on. But we're definitely spinning up, and we'd be more than willing and happy to talk to anybody that wants to work with us.
Right. Right. And that just looking at it this way, how a race car is never done. I believe company websites are never done because
Oh, they never are. Yeah. Yeah,
just
it's a constant battle, right? How good is good enough?
mhm.
Do you really want to put out something out there? I mean, like, I don't know. I've kind of like focused on if you can get a B plus for now, you can always
Yeah,
ease your way into the A grades later. So,
100%. How much
otherwise,
can I wordsmith this page? And
yeah,
is it worth my
exactly.
time?
Yeah, definitely a point of diminishing returns at some point.
100%, sir. 100%. So
Mhm.
don't try to kill yourself on that one. It does not pay in the end, but it's okay.
It's good
Um
advice.
well, it's pain. It's pain shared. So hopefully
Yep.
that will be the least of your problems and everything else will be going well. And thank you for coming on and do
Yeah.
appreciate
Thanks for having
the
me.
we finally got it done and we can cross the first one off the checklist and soon we'll cross off number two.
Yeah, sounds good. I would love to come back, and I've enjoyed the conversation. I had no idea we were already talking for an hour, so I guess that's a good show.
Well,
Yeah.
well, we try and sometimes we succeed. Usually it's at the guests, not the hosts. So we thank you again and hope you had a great time. Thank you, sir.
All right, awesome. Yeah,
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you again. All right, good talking to you guys.